Hey, welcome to the home of horsepower and the launch of one of our coolest, most ambitious projects in a long time. It involves this steel Repop 68 Mustang body
and a mountain of steel and aluminum parts. Now, when we're finished, you'll get to see our busted knuckles and a car that's especially built for one of America's fastest growing motorsports hobbies, all out of a box.
Drag strips are fun if you just like to run fast and straight for a few seconds. Oval tracks are cool too, especially if you like to turn left a lot. But the road course has got it all. The ultimate challenge for car and driver alike. Road course racing has been around almost since the automobile itself. Now there's competition in every conceivable class for pros and amateurs alike. Why, it's even a family affair for people like the Edelbrocks, who love thrashing on their trio of Mustang fastbacks. Nowadays, car clubs can offer members the thrills of safe road course racing on just about any kind of budget. And there are weekend track days where anyone can come out and enjoy a legal adrenaline rush. Here you only compete with yourself, but for the car and driver, it's a test of skill, speed, steering, timing, braking, the works. So we made a deal with Year One to build a track car, and their head honcho wants it built as a tribute to a road course enthusiast and high-performance icon, Vic Edelbrock.
American-made company, hellacious successful story for the last 80, 100 years, however long it's been. It's forever in our life. And it's a selling feature. The color scheme, the number 27, everything about it is just super cool, and we think it'll add value to people wanting the car.
If you want it when it looks like this, you might be the one who wins it in our big giveaway.
Yeah, but we got a long way to go before any of that stuff can happen, so let's get this thing in gear. In fact, we're going to put the engine together first, a track-worthy 347 Ford small block. We're repurposing a short block from a test motor that only has a few runs on it. Now, it's got a Boss block built to take the abuse it'll get with high RPM track use, plus a forged crank, lightweight forged pistons, and I-beam rods. We're going to start off with these Edelbrock cylinder heads, and not because of the tribute. These RPM extremes are ideal for our track car with an as-cast design and CNC porting. Now, they come with a 185cc intake runner, 202 stainless steel intake valves, and a beehive spring. Now, the 59cc combustion chamber is going to give us a compression ratio of about 10.2 to 1. Now, for some of you novice gearheads that may be wondering what exactly the compression ratio is, I hope this helps you out. The compression ratio tells you how much the engine squeezes a certain volume of air that it intakes. So to make this simple, in an engine with a 10 to 1 compression ratio, for every 10-ounce volume of air pulled in, the piston compresses it to a 1-ounce volume. A higher compression ratio means it's pulling in more air and allows the engine to extract more mechanical energy from a given mass of air-fuel mix, which means more power. With our 10.2 to 1 compression ratio, we're going to be able to run pump gas, enjoy great performance, and have an engine that's reliable to handle all those abusive track miles. Now, earlier we installed a camshaft that's also a great choice for the track. It's a trick flow hydraulic roller with 235 intake duration, 248 exhaust, and a max lift of 574 and 595. Now, it's got an operating range from 3,200 to 6,800 RPMs, which will give you the power to compete off of the corners and carry you all the way down the straightaway. These push rods are sitting on top of hydraulic lifters that came from Trick Flow.
Component matching is especially critical in a racing environment. That's why repurposing this RPM air gap intake manifold is a good idea in more ways than one. It's got an operating range from 25 to 6,500 RPM, and this air gap design itself will be beneficial in hot track conditions.
Our cast aluminum needle bearing roller rockers also came from Trick Flow. Now we finish up top with our Edelbrock valve covers that look pretty sharp on this old small block. The oiling system consists of a milling high volume pump with a Canton pickup that's designed to flow a lot of oil. Now, it's going to work perfect with our deep sump Canton pan that has increased oil capacity, and it's TIG welded to prevent leaks and cracks.
Our 347 is finished and ready to fire up, and what a first big step on the road to building our giveaway track car. We had a special reason for building that engine first. You see, Vic Edelbrock is due here in a few minutes, and We're going to let him man the controls during the dyno run. Today we've got our first ever horsepower track car build off the ground. This Mustang body shell is made by a company called Dynacorn Classic Bodies, and they make them for 67 to 70 fastbacks. The steel used is thicker than what they used for the original, but it contains less additives, so it's going to be more flexible to work with, and that's probably a good thing, because unlike an assembly line car, building a replica always involves some fitment challenges. What we're going to work with right now is a brake and suspension setup to go under that steel body. This is a Stage 5 kit, all road racing components that match and all designed to fit 67 to 1970 Mustangs. The first pieces we bolt up are a couple of coilover shock mounts.
Our suspension setup is a negative roll system. Now what that means is the upper control arm is designed to create a negative camber gain during cornering for improved handling. Now it doesn't mount in the stock location. It's actually 1 3/8 inches lower, so we need to do some drilling. They're a huge improvement over the stamped steel and have no need for adjusting.
But we will have adjustability for the lowers, and we mount them with these plates that have 3 bolt holes. The closer the bolt is to the frame, the more negative camber you get, which is very critical when you're out there cutting corners.
Next up is this adjustable strut rod. Now its job is to keep the lower control arm from moving forward and back, and it mounts up here to a bracket that turns out to be an accessory. Now we'll go ahead and get that thing on order and weld it up when it gets here. We can finish up our coilover setup with these Edelbrock racing springs wrapped around QA1 double adjustable shocks, and add some rigidity to the strut tower with this outer wheel strut tower brace. Finally, the spindles and brakes. Now our Wheelwood setup has 13-inch slotted and drilled rotors with pre-mounted 6-piston brake calipers. With a track car like this, a killer set of brakes is something you can't cut corners with, and hey, there's no pun intended there. When you're out on the track, you're using the brakes just as much as you're on the gas, so they generate a bunch of heat, and you want a good dependable set that you know are going to work next time you hit the pedal.
Yeah, and steering is just about as critical. And on the road course, a manual rack and pinion is the way to go. It lets you feel the road, but you also get some of the benefits of power steering without the power drain. Now, this is a Flaming River rack and pinion cradle setup that we're going to use. It's designed for 3.3 turns lock to lock, which simply means you only have to turn the wheel 3 1/3 times to go all the way to the left or all the way to the right. It's a real simple install. You just bolt the cradle up to the chassis, secure the rack to the cradle, then with a load on the suspension, install the tie rod ends and attach the rod ends to the spindles. Gotta tell you, except for some minor modifications in the beginning and the brackets we're still waiting for, everything up front went together surprisingly well. Let's hope we get that lucky out back.
Yeah, and I think we will with this fabricated 9-inch housing from Curry. Now this thing has 3-inch axle tubes and large bearing Torino type ends, and they even went as far as to weld the leaf spring pads on for us. Now here's something you see a lot in drag cars. This back bracing that goes all the way from the center of the housing to the end of the axle tube is all for stiffening the whole piece. So needless to say, this thing won't bend. Before we load it up, we're going to lay down a couple coats of paint to prevent any rust. For the third member, we're running a 9+ nodular iron Sportsman case, also from Curry, and stuffed inside is a True Track differential. Now the way that works is as you go into a corner, that transfers the power to the wheel with the most weight on it. So when you go into a right-hand corner, it puts the power to the left rear wheel to pull the car through the corner. Plus, we're also running a 375 gear ratio.
We opted for the Wheelwood parking brake kit, which goes on first, followed by the 31 spline Curry axle. Now before it's seated, got to drop in this U-shaped retainer. Now the trick is to install the nuts through a hole in the axle. This 12.19-inch rotor goes on next, followed by the caliper. When it comes to brakes, you got to make sure everything lines up and fits perfectly, and we just discovered a little fitment issue with ours. You see, this rotor is supposed to fit flush against the axle flange, and ours doesn't because This little knurl behind the threads of the axle studs is a little thicker and, well, consequently it won't fit through these holes in the rotor. No big deal, we'll make it fit. Enlarging the holes with a drill press is faster, but you can get by with your garage hand drill. Oh, you know, this is an example of how when you mix and match components, sometimes you gotta make it fit yourself.
Out back, we're running Global West multi-leaf springs that are made for our application. Now they're designed to control wheel hops so there's no traction bars needed, and they'll lower the car right about an inch. Now check this out. When they're run with a Dellalum bushing in the rear shackle, there's no need to run a sway bar to control the lateral movement. Now speaking about bushings, a lot of you may know that they're a pain in the butt to get in or out when you're working on a suspension project. But here's a little tip that might help you out. This is going to be pretty simple, so make sure you follow along. The first thing we're going to do is take a measurement of the width of the bushing and the shell, which in our case is 5 inches. Then add a ½ an inch to each side, which will make the total 6. The only cost here is the all thread, a couple of big washers, and some big nuts. And since we're working with aluminum, a hammer and a piece of wood, plus a few bad words can damage the bushing. Now keep this tool in mind. With the correct size all thread, it can be used for extractions as well. Now the hole in the bushing is for a greaser, so make sure you position it towards the bottom. With the rear spring hanging, all we have to do is lower the rear end, drop in some U-bolts and some bottom plates, and the front and rear suspension will be done. And hey, our little pony's gonna have a lot of spring in its step. Now I may be a little pessimistic at times, but I'm really surprised at how well everything fit. But hey, we've got a long way to go.
The horsepower guys are jacked up over their new track car project, getting in on one of the hottest off-road sports ever. For the car, it's all about performance, steering, and braking. And for the driver,
the main thing in this racing, Joe, is go out and have fun. And don't hurt your car, don't hurt anybody else's car, and just have a good time.
Vic Edelbrock ought to know he's a track car lover himself. And as a tribute to Vic, we're building the '68 Mustang to give away. Starting with the engine, a 347 small block we filled with a special combo of high-performance parts. Now we're about to see how much power we've got. And we've got a special reason to make a powerful statement here in the dyno.
Hey, what's going on in
Hey,
here?
stranger.
Huh?
How are you?
How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Hey, that's a nifty looking piece there.
Yeah, it's
I like that. I like that.
running some all your parts on it pretty
Well,
much.
tell me about it.
Ford Racing 347 short block. It's got the RPM
Cool.
XTs on it, air gap intake, 800
Cool.
ABS carb.
Great. How much horsepower you get out of this
Well,
guy?
we're going to see today. That's the
All
whole
right,
thing.
all right.
It should make some pretty good horsepower. Compression's right at 9.8 to 1, so
Good.
able to run good pump
that's
gas
perfect.
on it.
Let's go run it. Okay, press those right buttons now.
Yeah, we're ready for those.
The one that says horsepower, that's the one.
Mike got the motor broken in before Vic got here, so it's ready to go. Let's hope Vic's ready because we're going to let him run the dyno.
Roll.
You sure you're going to let me do this now?
Yep.
Yeah. Did I have to sign anything saying that
No
I'm not a-
waivers for me. I'm good to go.
Okay, here we go.
Look at that power curve. That's power white. That's your torque, and then that's just pounds an hour of fuel.
God.
Still climbing there.
We went off the chart. Yeah. Gonna make the chart bigger. That's
6,000,
510.
503 at 6,000, 480 at 4,600.
Look at that torque, 480.
Yeah.
Oh my
4,600.
Oh my God. You know, I don't think we want to change anything.
Oh, there's always room for improvement, Vic.
No.
Come on. Oh yeah.
I
it's
might
just
break
still
the
fine.
dyno.
I think we're safe to add about 2 degrees.
Go, baby, go.
517, 488.
Holy smoke.
You just went 2 degrees?
2 degrees.
So you're 32 now?
Yeah, 32.
Let's go for gold and add 2 more.
Woo!
All right, you ready for another one?
You damn right. Bigger and better.
See if that 2 degrees helped or hurt us. 1 horsepower.
You're there.
Look at the torque though. I mean, it is not moving.
No.
4,600, 488.
Very same one.
So you're there.
That's it.
See it, maybe.
518
18
horsepower,
horsepower.
347 inches.
Wait till Ford hears that.
Yeah, Ford would be proud. And we're especially proud to share the horsepower dyno with my personal hero, a horsepower legend we all admire. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. We've gotten emails recently from some of you wanting more information about a one-of-a-kind spark plug test we conducted here in our dyno, and, well, I'm glad to say we have an update for you. Several months ago, the makers of E3 spark plugs asked us to test the performance of their Diamond Fire plugs against a popular competitor. They were out to prove an engine loaded with their plugs would produce fewer harmful emissions. Horsepower invited Sensors Inc. to bring in their state-of-the-science test equipment to monitor and convert our dyno results into reliable data. We wanted real-world conditions, so all test runs were made with our Chevy LS small block, 2,500 RPMs for 5 minutes, then 3,000 for another 5 minutes with each set of plugs. Veteran engineer Jim McFarland crunched the numbers for us, and his report shows that 3,000 RPM cruising speed, E3s produce 43.4% less NOx than the other plugs, 20.5% less CO2, which is associated with greenhouse gases. At the same time, though, horsepower and torque were even higher than the competitor, 8 and 14 respectively. Finally, brake-specific fuel consumption was 4% less while E3s were in the engine. In other words, there was better fuel consumption, better mileage. Now, I don't want to load you down with too many numbers right now, but Jim did write a detailed article that you can read in our PowerBlockTV.com magazine. Hey, I want to steer you toward an upgrade idea for your classic street machine. Flaming River has come out with their Classic Series tilt column with the original GM ignition key assembly. At the 3 o'clock position, hey, it's perfect for your muscle car or hot rod. Made in America with new parts, made to be yours for $549 and up.